These interviews are in partnership with BTCC Blueprints. Go check them out, they sell all sorts of brilliant merchandise from t-shirts to posters and much more. You can visit their website using the link in the description below. Welcome BTCC legend Paul O'Neill, thank you very much for coming on, getting involved. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I've been called worse, so yeah, thanks for that title. But yeah, no, I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, it's been a year, isn't it? And we're still figuring out what's going on. But yeah, I'm really good. I had a really nice Christmas actually, and a really nice New Year because I was able to actually spend it for the first time in quite a few years, 4 years or something like that, with my mum and dad. So got my test and everything sorted to make sure I didn't have COVID, and then I spent a lot of time with my mum and dad because I'm usually away for my birthday on New Year's Eve. So you know what, mate, it was really nice. So I'm pleased. I'm pleased it's all over now. I've still got my Christmas tree up. Actually, I better take that down. Is that bad luck? That's not good, is it? Ow! Oh, it's real. I didn't realise.
That's brilliant.
That's gone well. Let's move that back there. Right, as long as I don't switch the lights on, it must be. Ow! It must be bad. Throw that on the floor. Right, sorry. I've just
no worries.
Ruined your intro, mate. Okay. I'm all good, thank you. I'm really.
Yeah. I presume it must have been quite good after such a busy touring car season, such a short space of time, to have a bit of a break.
Do you know what, mate? That is a question that no one ever asks, because what people don't realise is, I'm a touring car fan, a massive touring car fan, and I've been lucky enough to drive in it. But do you know what happens a lot of the time is I shut myself off from it because it's like any job. It sometimes just gets a bit on top of you. And I'm very privileged and I love what I do. But it's just nice to have the break away from all the politics, all the dramas that are happening, and all the people wanting to know more about what's going on. So it's been actually lovely to have a nice break from it and not have to be under the spotlight too much. So yeah, you're the first person actually I've spoken to it in this year.
Really?
About it. So yeah, so that's a cracking question, mate, and I appreciate you asking it, because a lot of people just think that it's like, it's the dream thing to do. And don't get me wrong, I love it. Me and Tim Harvey, Addison, Richard John Neal, Louise Goodman, Steve Ryder, we love doing it. But like any human, sometimes it can just get on top of you, and it does do that sometimes. So yes, mate, it's all good, and it was nice to have a little break as well. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I presume there's not just on the race weekend, and especially with last season, we didn't really know if we were going to go racing at all. How much extra work goes on behind the scenes when you're putting on the show?
If I took you with me to the first event at Oulton Park after lockdown, you would be staggered, because I'm not saying that you don't know what's going on or anything, but I've been around quite a while, 21 years in touring cars, something like that. And I couldn't get my breath at what ITV Sport, Gunay Gok, who's the series editor, Lewis, the director, all these people that are high up in ITV Sport, I couldn't get my breath what they had done, because the COVID thing was still a shock to me and to everybody else, and people were a bit like, oh God, social distancing, this, that, and the other. What do we do? Is 2 meters enough? Is it this? So there's all this going on. Honestly, what they did was made me feel the safest that I've ever felt in this pandemic, because I'm type 1 diabetic and I can't really afford to get it, mate, like the next person. But when your autoimmune system isn't the best, it's not great. So I took advice off people, but at the same time, I could get run over by a bus tomorrow, mate. So I thought I'll go and do it, and it was the right decision. ITV Sport did amazing things. I can't actually tell you the amount of stuff they did. The meetings, the Zoom calls we had, health and safety, temperature checks on site was the norm, but we had a blocked off TV compound, so we couldn't go in. Once we were in, that was it. Even if I I had a problem once, actually. I've never told anyone this, but I'd gone in, got my temperature checked, signed in, and I'd left my insulin needle in my car, which was literally 20 foot away. I could see it. It was near the fence. And I was like, I need to go back and get my insulin. Oh, that's me done. And once you're out, that's you finished. They have to replace you or you just don't work. So I spoke to my series editor and he's like, mate, he says, rules are rules. I was like, that's absolutely fine. And luckily for me, the cameraman that had a dispensation, the cameramen that work on the, as you see the shots getting tracked at certain corners, they were allowed to come in and out once. So that's what he did. He actually, one of the cameramen, but that's what you have to, it sounds silly, but that's what you have to do. Everyone's got to work to a regulation. So I was really pleased with how it was. I know there might have been some people who were a bit like, oh God, it's just frustration. But you can only go from what the scientists and the government who are ever in charge, say to do. So yeah, ITV Sport I must admit, we have our differences, but they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And to get that show on the road was amazing. Because the other thing I'll say as well, because we were all like face masked up, and it was all, even though it was the right thing to do, it was still a bit like, oh man, when I go home, some of the pubs were open still, and people, I don't go pubs to be fair, but people were congregating, and I was like, what is the, as soon as the ITV clock stops, I can do what I want. So what is the plan here? But brilliantly put by the director, Lewis Hurty, said to me, mate, if we can make this work, if there's another lockdown, this was the first round. He said, if there's another lockdown, we can show that we can actually operate and there's no problem. And that was the key thing for me. And it was a brilliant thing that he said. And he was dead right, because what happened, we ended up in tears, and we were going to some places which were really bad. So it really worked out. And I was proud to be a part of the ITV Sport team during the pandemic and what they've achieved. So yeah, it was good, mate. But yeah, sorry, that was a bit long-winded. But
that's good. It's good. So obviously it was a great season of racing, but it must have been a relief to get the season over and done with, sort of become the end of the year.
Yeah, it was. It was intense. It was intense. I was happy to be working, because everybody's got a story, but us self-employed people got proper volleyed. We got volleyed, and listen, I've survived. But if I didn't have any dependents, if I had kids and I had other things going on that I needed to make sure were contributed towards, I'd have been absolutely stuffed. And I've only survived because I live on my own. That is the only way I've survived. So it was intense, but I was glad for the work, and it kept me sane. I like to keep myself busy on the best of days, but when there's a pandemic, you can sit thinking about things that really don't matter, and they can become a big problem. So I was just happy to be out there and working. To be fair, but yeah, it was intense, and it was nice to get the season over the line, because I remember speaking to Tom Ingram, and he didn't think it was going to get over the line when the end of the year, when we got to the final couple of rounds, the last round. Me and Tom spoke a bit, and he was like, "Hey, let's see what happens." But yeah, I was really happy that it got pushed over the line, and Ash Sutton was a deserving champion. It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite worrying, because just before the final round, we went into lockdown again, or tier 4, whatever. So I think obviously Turkington was leading, and we didn't know what was going to happen, and obviously it did go ahead. But yeah,
that was a problem, wasn't it? Because people. It would have been the wrong way to end the season, but the rules are rules. If it had happened, I mean, it would have just been, you'd have been devastated, because I think everybody's money was on Ash, because they knew what the weather conditions were going to be like. And even I said it on tweets, if there's any kind of greasy situation, I just think, not just because of Ash as a driver, I just think, Laser Tools as a team had found something, that makes the car work when it's not completely bone dry. So, they had that in their pocket. So Ash Sutton probably knew he'd won it before he'd even got to Brands Hatch if he didn't crash. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was great to get it over the line, like you say. And there's nothing worse as a sportsman to build yourself up and then just be, do you know what I mean? Even if you were Colin or even if you were Ash, because it's like you just feel it'd feel unfinished as a sportsman. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, motorsport. When did you first become a fan of racing? When did you start following it? Was there anyone that influenced you with it at all, or?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I got asked this a bit, but the first thing I can remember is I want to say Nigel Mansell. Watching Nigel Mansell in like '86 when he was in the Williams. I'd have only been 7 or 6 years of age. I remember going around the outside of PK at Stowe, taking the lead, and the crowd just erupting. But the more I look at it as an older person, I watched him for years, obviously after, and I watched him win the title and get close to winning the title, and I was happy when he won it. It actually probably wasn't him. It was actually Murray Walker, because Murray told the story and Murray made it come alive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is, as a sports person, he was amazing and I loved him and he was a showman and I just wanted to see what he did next. But it was Murray Walker that made his story and other people's stories come alive. And that's my main influence. It's Murray Walker, because then I didn't even know what touring cars were. I was like, what's this? Murray Walker's voice. What's this? This is amazing. And that was it. Bang goes into that. Murray Walker has a lot to answer for with my 41-year-old life. That's how it was.
Yeah. And obviously, when did you first come across touring cars?
I think the first ever race I seen would have been, I've got pictures of it actually. So I didn't even know what they were.
Yeah.
How bad's that? So 1993, my mum and dad saved up for like ever, and I mean ever, to take me, because my dad was a taxi driver and my mum was it was a difficult time in the early 90s. You've probably heard of the recessions and things. My mum didn't have a job half the time. She was like flat out trying to find work all the time. So we didn't have massive amounts of money, but we never went without. But they bought tickets for the Grand Prix, the F1 Grand Prix in 1993. And I remember we went early and the touring cars were on. I remember watching and I was thinking, what is that estate car doing going around there? And I was like, check out that girl driving that car, Dad. And he was like, what girl's that? And I went, that Jan Lammers in that. Obviously, it was the Dutch Jan Lammers, which I didn't know, but I was like, no way, there's a woman driving an estate car. That's amazing.
That is brilliant.
Yeah. So that was the first time I'd seen touring cars. So my interest was ignited. I'm probably going back from 93 at the Grand Prix. I went home and I probably then looked into it when it was on Grandstand. I seen it on Grandstand.
Yeah.
Steve Ryder was presenting it. So then I was like, and then I seen Murray was commentating on it. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And then from that day onwards, I was like, I want to do that. I want to do something in that. And that was how it come about, really.
So obviously that ignited your passion for touring cars and you were like, yes, I want to do this. But in racing, where did you start? What championships did you do? How did you start racing, basically?
So when was it, 90? I think because my sister got famous, she was in the Spice Girls in 95, and I was just leaving GCSEs. I'd done my GCSEs. I'm actually not a very clever person, but academically, I struggled to, like, the normal stuff, English, maths and all that. I scraped through with C's and stuff. But I remember when I left, my sister had become massively famous between leaving in the 5th year or year 11, I think it's called now.
Yeah.
Left that year, and we went. I remember going to the park, and as you do when you're a kid, when you've left school, and there's a big summer break until you do your A levels. Yeah. And I signed up to do A levels, and I was so proud of myself because I'm so thick. I got the chance to do A levels, so I cut a long story short, I absolutely got battered, just bullied, like not physical, but mental bullying. It just took its toll on me. because of the situation with my sister. And I don't regret any of that, and I'm not going to cry about it, because as I've said to people before, I'd have done the same to, I'd have done the same to Mel C's brother. I'd have tripped him up in the corridor and did handstands in front of him and wore a trackie and dressed up as his sister. I'd have done the same because I like to take the mickey, but it takes its toll on people, and it did to me. So I just left, and my sister took me on a world tour. She said, you need to get your stuff sorted out. So I left college and worked in a factory down the road for about a year. But she said, listen, you're getting in a bit of trouble. And there was a few other things going on at the time, and I was just getting mixed up with silly things. So I said to my sister, right, okay, let's do that then. So through my sister, I met a chef, the head chef of the Spice Girls, because my sister had asked me what I wanted to do. She's like, I'll pay for you to do something. I'll help you out, get your leg in the foot in the door. And and she said, weirdly, the chef, her brother races in something called GT1, which was like World Endurance Championship. I knew nothing about any of these things. So anyway, I met him. He took me to Donington Park. He was racing against I think JJ Leto and people like that. Really? Proper pedalers. Yeah, it's amazing. Like World Endurance Championship. Yeah. And he said, you need to do this, this, and this, get your race license, and off you go. So I went and did that, and I don't even know his name. I can't remember his name. And it's so sad because he's the guy who gave me the direction to do it. So yeah, it all happened in 97, got my race license, and then kind of didn't do anything in 98. Just went to a few racetracks to watch something called the MGF Cup, which was like Clio Cup. It was a one-make championship, Rover MGF. So I did that with a team over in Runcorn who I got to know through somebody who's an amazing guy, Colin from Liverpool, who I just met people through friends, and they directed me through all the mazes. And he said, oh, you want to go to ABG Motorsport, blah, 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 over in Runcorn. So I went over there, took me to these racetracks, showed me, I just watched and watched and watched for a year. And then 99, I made my debut horrendously and spun about 15 times and finished dead last in a race at Silverstone. I'd never even been on the track. It was like I went the wrong way and down the oh god, terrible. I was awful. So that's how it all started. But it's there's a lot more to it than that, to be fair. But you don't want to hear that. It's boring.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong. You came into British Touring Cars in 2001, was it?
Yes, my man, I did. Yeah.
In the production class in that little Peugeot, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, in the little yellow Peugeot.
How was that? How was it? How you imagined it, and was it difficult?
Do you know what? I spoke to somebody the other day. You might have known of him, and if you don't know him, you need to follow him. Matt Q, who's proper lad, works for Autosport, and he's a really good journalist, really proper good lad. Done a lot for Autosport. Was BTCC editor for Autosport, and I spoke to him 2 days ago about the Astra Coupe, which was the car I drove in 2003 and 6, I think, as well. But anyway, yeah. I did 2 years of MGF, and I'm still trying to find my feet. The tracks, I hadn't even been to some of the tracks yet.
Really?
Yeah, like 2 years of racing, no karting is a bit of an ask. And then we made the jump in 2001 to British Touring Cars with Tech Speed, who I'd been with the previous year in my second year of MGFs, and I have never seen anything like it in my life. It was so professional. It was staggering. And do you know what was weird? When they used to let you go out of the garages, because you had to be in your car at a certain time and you had to be pushed out. Yeah, I wasn't used to that. It was like you were in the assembly area usually, and just fired at the back of no one cared about you.
Yeah.
We had the garages, and I remember getting pushed out of Brands Hatch, and they fired the engine up, and I tested the car quite a bit, so I knew what was going on. But because I'd been in there early, like at 7 or whatever, I'd not seen anyone else. I'd not seen any family. So he pushes out for free practice one. I'm like, this is it. Belts on, get the things on. Didn't have power steering, so you always like, oh, it was a really hard car to drive. Start to turn down the pit lane, and I'm like, stopped at the bottom. Lights are on red. Plato, Muller in front of me. I'm like, flipping it. This is easy. And then remember the lights went out. It went green. H pattern gearbox in them things. First gear, bah, bah, bah. And I just remember coming over the crest to go down Paddock Hill Bend, and I was like, ugh. there was a sea of people.
Yeah.
I'd never seen fans at a racetrack. It took me about 2 laps just going around going, what is this? And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And the car in general was still to this day the most difficult front wheel drive car I've ever driven. It wasn't that, they weren't that fast, but it was the most difficult car to drive. And it physically, I mean, I'm quite a big lad now, but I was about 4 stone lighter than I am, and I was quite ripped. My shoulders were out. The car, it was the Peugeots, 306s, I think there was 4 of them on the track, or 5, and only one of them had power steering, and that was for my teammate, because she just couldn't deal with and this is not sexist, she just couldn't deal with the forces necessary.
Yeah.
And she was an older lady as well, so they put Clio power steering pump on it, and it made it a lot easier. I was thinking of doing it myself because it was hard to drive. Technically, a rewarding car, but horrendous to drive physically. I remember someone bought it off me called Mark Fullerlove, who was a Lotus Auto Bytel champion the year before, and he couldn't drive it. He come in and said something. It's like a bucking Bronco. I was like, mate, that's how they are. So I had to jump in and do a time, and then he had to try and match it. He took forever because I'm that good. Not sure. Yeah. It didn't take long, but yeah, it was difficult. So yeah, great. The production class is something that they need to look at bringing back. Yeah. I know they got minis, but there's something that needs to be in between. Cheap, a bit more expensive than minis, but a lot less than touring cars. I think anyway. Just gives someone a
that'd be very cool.
Yeah, just be in for people. It'd be good.
So obviously, the year after you moved to the Vauxhall, the team Egg Sport. That was obviously a great year. Obviously, you got your first win, which when I heard that I'd be interviewing you, I went straight to my room. I've got all my review DVDs, and I'm looking through like 2002. Get that, and then straight I watched the race 2 where you win at Oulton Park. How was that?
Oh man, I can't. The only thing I'd say about that is there's not many things in life, and I don't want to sound like your dad here, but there's not many things in life that you can actually stand up and say, I will take that to my grave and I'll be a happy man.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing I will always remember, because you've got to remember, for me, I never thought I would. Where I come from is where I live. So I live in a place called Widnes, and it's a great place, and the people are hardworking, and they're amazing people, and that's why I live here. I could live anywhere I wanted to with work. Could live anywhere in the UK. I choose to live here. The people are sweet, but we don't really have a lot here. It's a chemical works town, and the Industrial Revolution more or less started here. It's old school, and I never thought I'd race a car. So when I did get to race a car in 1999, I then thought I will never, ever, and this is very negative, I thought I will never, ever get on a podium. And it took me a year and a half to get on the podium. I couldn't believe it. So I've been on the podium once in my whole racing career, and then I'm in a touring car.
Yeah.
Right. So now that's a bit weird. So in the yellow Peugeot, I'm in a touring car, and I'm like, I got on the podium. I thought I'll never win a race, and and then we did a deal to do touring cars, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm in touring cars. But then I've gone all the way through that year with I had 2 podiums actually, one at Mondello Park and one at Silverstone, I think. Yeah, might have even been 3, I don't know. Anyway, it was a couple or 3, and I'm like still thinking I'll never win a race, but let's see what happens. And then they got the phone call off Egg and Triple Eight, because they were quite big news at the time. Egg Sport, or Egg Credit Card, they put a lot of money into the team, and they wanted us because Matt Neal had signed, and it was a play on names, and they liked me, they liked the connection with me. So it was a good thing. So I'm driving around. I had a horrendous start to the year. I nearly finished second on me. It was nearly an Egg 1-2 actually. I went in I had a front left punch on the last corner. When I passed Dan Eves, I was running second, and I think I was running second. I passed Dan Eves, and I went straight off. I might have been in third actually, but I went. I remember feeling a vibration, bang, straight in the wall. It was only 2 races that day, and Yeah, and the second race, I ended up getting fired off by Tim Harvey. It was my own fault. He turned me around going down Paddock Bend when I tried to cut him off. But anyway, so I've left Brands Hatch on the first weekend thinking this is the worst ever thing that could happen to me in my life. This is horrendous, and I'm a bit beaten up. And I've never told anyone this, I don't think. I got an email off a guy called Derek Warwick, who is an absolute legend, F1. Yeah. I was a massive fan of his because I watched early 90s Formula One a lot. And he messaged me a big long, and I wish I still had the email, big long email. And he just left Triple Eight because it was him, Roland Dane, who now runs Triple Eight Australia, and Ian Harrison, who was Triple Eight on his own when I was there. He sent me a big long paragraph email saying, Paul, never give up. Your day will come. You've done brilliant so far. Like really nice, wise words. And I was like, yeah, thanks, Derek. That's amazing. Cheers, mate. Because he was kind of there at the races. He kind of handed it over. And then he said, he said, your day will come. And I was like, yeah, we'll see what happens anyway. So pitched up at Oulton's. Literally, I can do Oulton in 20 minutes if I stick to the speed. Anyway, so I'd not really done much around Oulton Park, even though it was my home circuit. I'd only raced there 3 times probably, in the championship. Pitched up, and in qualifying, they used to qualify. The first 15 minutes, I think, was for the sprint race. And then we had a break, and then the next 15 minutes, I think, was then for the feature race. Anyway, I was 8th in the sprint, and then 4th in the feature race, I think, for qualifying. And Ian Harrison, who, it's a professional outfit, had a go at me. He said, you need to sort it out, mate. He said, you can't keep qualifying 8th and then do mega in the feature race. I'd out-qualified James Thompson, who was the championship leader. So I was like, thanks for backhanded compliment. But yeah, very long story short, me and James Thompson had an agreement that if I was holding him up, he just flashed me and I'll get out of the way. So after 3 laps, he just got fed up of me braking early and just looking in my mirrors. I was probably like this. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, he was my big hero. And Matt Neal was my teammate. And this is classic. I'll tell you this. This might get me in trouble. But I'm going to tell you. So the night before, this is bad. The night before, James Thompson and Matt Neal had gone out into Liverpool, and they'd asked me to go out as well because we didn't used to invite a Van Muller because he was French and everything. So I was only 22, and I went to bed. No, I didn't actually. I went home, and my mum and dad were playing down the local pub. So I took my engineer, Alex Somerset, who's an absolute ledge, and we were like, my mum and dad are in a band, and they were doing a great job. And then I went home, went to bed early, and I was like, seeing the 2 lads the next morning. Matt Neal looked properly. He didn't look great. And James Thompson can drink every day of the week and you wouldn't know. He's faster when he drinks. Weird. Very strange. That's what I found out about him the next day. He was fine with a hangover. He could drive really good. And which is, I condemn that, obviously. I wouldn't want anyone to do that now. Times have changed. And so Matt was in a bad way. And this is brilliant. Oh my God. I think I got told he got in at 4 a.m. or something ridiculous. So I knew as the races started, Matt was actually quite good in the first race, but I had a gearbox problem under the safety car. So that's 3 DNFs on the trot. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is horrendous. I'd lost faith. So anyway, in the end, started the feature race. Tomo's behind me, flashes me out the way after 3 laps. I let him pass. I just tag onto him, stay with the pack because we had pit stops then. And then they kind of like the Vauxhall red and white cars, they got on with it. And I was quite far behind, but I was still in a decent place. And then I seen Matt Neal crashing in front, like a bit further down the track. Yeah. Like, oh my God. He'd had a pit stop and he'd gone through the wrong pits because he was still hammered.
Yeah, he had an awful day that day. I think he had like 2 drive-through penalties for different things.
Why now?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I'm like, this is amazing. So I come in, and you've got to remember, I'd never done a pit stop. Because I'd never got that far into the race. Of
course, yeah.
Because I'd always crashed. So I'd come in, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh my God. And about this time, I'm on for a podium because I passed Warren Hughes, I think. So I'm like, oh, this has got to go right. Blah, 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 come in. stopped and the jacks have gone up and your eyes are on stalks and you're like, oh, and I'm like, it's in you. And they're like, Paul, first gear. And I'm like, it wouldn't go in. I'm like, got it in. Gone down the pit lane. Speed limit, Paul. I'm like, Jesus Christ, yeah, forgot about that. Get down. And I remember looking in my mirrors as I exited. Triple Eight were the best. Vauxhall were the best at pit stops. We used to make positions and time. They've come down. I've looked behind me and I've left Tim Harvey and Warren Hughes for dead. Like I've gapped them because of the pit stop. But now I've never driven on hot rear tyres and cold fronts. So the car steering. So it's like, so I'm like, oh my God. And I've got to Druids and the thing's like all the steering. I'm like, I'm going to go off here. But I'm in third place and I'm just thinking, I'm going to get a proper podium. Had a couple of big moments. Get a call on the radio. Paul, Tomo has got a puncher at the top of Clay Hill. I think that's the way it was. Tomo's got a puncher. Be careful round Druids. And I've come round and he's there with his hazards flashing and on the apex of Druids. I've gone round the outside of him, like crossed up. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm up to P2 now. And I'm like, oh my. And I've looked on the same lap. I can see a Van Muller down at. I can see it. Well, sorry, I just had a time. So I've had a look and I can see a Van Muller down the road. I'm like, no way. I'm catching him. I'm a legend. Catching him. I wasn't. He had a fuel pump problem. So he starts weaving. To try and get the fuel pickup. And I've gone on the radio and said, guys, can I pass a van? And they're like, they swore at me. They were like, get effing past him. Like, because they knew the problem. And the boys behind me were catching hard. And I had to keep up that 100% record of the Astros winning. So anyway, passed him. And then, do you know what I'll always remember about that day? I'll always remember, because I don't remember much about it because it was nuts. I remember I had my windows down that far either side because I don't deal with the heat very well. Everyone else has the windows up. And I could hear the commentator on the downshifts at 8,500 revs. These things are bam, 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 down at Knickerbrook. You can never hear anything. Windows open. I heard the Merseyside, Paul O'Neill. And I turned in and I just looked as I turned, because I had friends in the crowd and you never see them. I just looked and they were just like that. I just remember seeing people's faces, and it was nuts. Like, they didn't know me. They just loved the story that someone down the road is going to win the race. And it was the best last 3 or 4 laps ever. And I wish I could remember more of it. I just remember going off on the cooling down lap and nearly taking it. So that was my day. And then from that day onwards, I always said, if I died tomorrow or someone pulled the rug from under my feet and I could never race again, I'd take that to the grave. And that was the way it was. It was flipping great.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, the next year you went to the Vauxhall Works team and obviously got another win at Snetterton, defending off from your teammates. How was that sort of different from the first?
That was more intense, because I'd qualified 5th from what I remember, and it's because Tom Boardman had blocked me. It wasn't his fault. I think he was in a production car and he blocked me on the entry to the chicane, and they looked at the data and I'd have been on pole by about 10th and a half. And I've always been quite quick around Snetterton, weirdly. I don't know why, because it's a weird circuit. The circuit was weird, but I just went well around there. So anyway, yeah, it was qualified 5th, and there was a big crash at the start from what I remember. I think Warren Hughes squeezed Turkington into Reed or someone. There was loads of carnage anyway. I picked my way through it, and then I had a mega battle, and Van Muller, who was my teammate, we just didn't get on. Under the safety car, he kept hitting me, so I brake tested him, and I think something happened to his radiator, or anyway, he wasn't happy with me. He tried to kill me when we finished. But yeah, so I'd fended off a van on the restart. They had a bit of waiting, and from the last corner up the straight, it really takes effect. So if you get a good exit out the last corner, you can look in your mirror, you see him dropping away, but they were quick through the corners then, boys. So they could only catch me in the places where they weren't going to make any inroads. So yeah, I had a good pit stop, and I think I jumped. I had such a good pit stop. I think I jumped James Thompson. I jumped. So I was then second to Alan Morrison, and Alan Morrison then had an alternator failure, and all that bad luck I'd had over the years, I just felt like it was turning up for me then.
Yeah.
So then he went off with an alternator problem, I think, or an engine problem. I took the lead. I was miles in the lead, probably 8 seconds, and then I started thinking that's been my biggest problem. It's probably one of the biggest problems I've ever had in racing.
Yeah.
I just kept looking behind me, and James Thompson was catching, and he nearly did me on the last lap. And I think what he did, he come out of the toe at Bommel to have a look, and it went on all the dust. And as he come back, and he had a big slide. And when I looked in my mirror, I was like, I've won this one. And I remember down corner, and I was like, yes. And I was like, I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Because Matt Neal was at driving for Honda, and he'd crashed into me when I was trying to win at Brands Hatch. At a big meeting where there was 60,000 people for IndyCar, and he got booed and everything. So I was like, I'm not going to cry. This is anyway. I've come across that. I was like, oh my god. Oh yeah, that was the 1, 2, 3 was brilliant because there's some great pictures of all the big hitters from Vauxhall. It's like yes, and it was great to be part of a team. I loved it because I was a team player, but when I needed to, I could be as lethal as anyone. I'd fire down your inside and I'd be there. But yeah, that was a good day as well, fella. That was a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was obviously you've driven lots of great British touring cars. Have you got a favourite?
Oh, do you know it's a difficult one? This have I got a favourite? I loved the Astra because it did everything that you wanted it to do, but it wasn't spectacular at one thing. It was just good at everything.
Yeah,
very good at everything. And when you've got that, it's a great car. But I've got to say, I think the best times I've ever had are in the Integra, the DC. It was just, I think what come with that was we were the underdogs. The team ran a tight ship. I remember the brakes vibrating on the car because we just couldn't afford to put new brakes on it. But I was told they would work. There was play in the pedal. And we finished second at Silverstone that day.
Yeah, I was going to say that was something I remember you in the Honda getting that podium. So
nobody could get near the Aeon gas cars, and that day we were the only people who got anywhere near them. I mean, I had a battle with Tom Onslow Cole for the lead in a gas car at Silverstone, which is like the longest straight, and I fended off Tom Chilton, who's in the same car. We didn't have petrol power; they had massive power. But yeah, with the Integra, the memories with the Integra, it was great times. The team was fully firing, and it was what Tech Speed were about. I'd been with them since I was 19. You got to remember that, and I was 29 that day.
Yeah,
I was 30 that day at Silverstone, and that was the second to last year I did with Tech Speed, and I owe a lot to Marvin and Sandra Humphreys who ran that team. They put their pension into me racing as underwriting the sponsor that we had, because we had a bit of trouble getting the money out of the sponsor, so they underwritten it. And the sponsor they were always going to pay, but they just couldn't at that time. And yeah, that's how motorsport should be. There's too many sharks and people who just jump from the team, don't care. But then people cared. It was great. We had a good time.
Obviously, more recently, lots of people know you for your presenting with ITV, the commentating on support races. How did that actually come about? How did that start?
So that is a good question, actually, because that was So I finished racing in 11, I think it was, with the Chevy Cruze, because I just wasn't going to plan. The rules were changing, didn't like it. I was getting fed up. Anyway, I knew it was coming to an end. Couldn't find any sponsors. We'd just come out of the credit crunch. It was a disaster. I couldn't be arsed anymore. Sorry for swearing, but I just couldn't be bothered. And I was a bit like, what am I going to do? So I thought, I've got to put it out there that I'm not doing it, so people know if they want me to do anything else. I didn't think ITV were going to ring me up and say, Paul, could you come and help us out? That's what happened. A guy called Simon Parry, who I owe my presenting career to, like fully. Like, he was the guy who rang up and went, Paul, heard you're not racing, because it was in autosport. Is there much truth in the matter? Do you fancy doing a bit of roving reporting? And I was like, and I'll be honest with you, I've got a bit of anxiety. I don't actually 100% feel comfortable with what I do. I don't mind commentating, but when there's a camera in front of me, I don't like it. This is fine because it's just me and you.
Yeah.
But when there's a live camera, I just don't like it, mate. And I never have done. And I don't like speaking in front of big groups. I do have to do the speaking, and it's difficult, mate. And I'm being completely honest with you, it's just not nice. But I've learned to manage it. And anyway, yeah, I was a bit like, I don't want to do this. Oh God, I don't know. Anyway, they said, just turn up in your civvies and we'll give you a microphone and we've got loads of time to fill. We haven't got much money, but let's try it out. And that's how it all started. And as it progressed, it was, Paul, can you just jump in? Because Tim's got to go and he's doing a Porsche race, or do you mind speaking at the top of the show with Steve? And once they could see I was okay doing it, I just got every role then. It's like, can you commentate? And I'm like, I don't know, I've never done it in my life. And they were like, right, there's a race on that's not going to be on the telly, but on a Saturday, can you go with Richard John Neal, who's an absolute hero?
Yeah.
I love working with Richard, learned everything from him and Addison. And I went and did it, and I was like, he just said, you're a pundit, COCOM, so just go off the back of what they say and insert, what you think you would do, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it all started, mate. So, and you know what? I love it as much as the racing that I used to do. Actually,
yeah.
You know what? I think I love it more because
I
like telling stories, as you can imagine. You're probably going to run out of time.
No, it's okay.
When I was racing, I was always scared. I remember reading in Autosport, watch out for Paul O'Neill in 2010. He's one of the bravest of the brave. You're having a laugh, mate. I hated it. I didn't hate it, but I was scared of being hurt, which is a big thing to admit to, but that's how it was. I didn't do karting, so I didn't know what it was like to have a massive accident, so touch wood, I've not had one yet. But yeah, it was always a bit of a place. But that's how it come about.
And it seems with your presenting and stuff with ITV, it's sort of led to lots of different things, from like Facebook Live to like now The Pitch, which is really cool. Obviously, you always get my fans involved. We, especially last season, we always enjoyed your preview shows before each meeting, where you'd speak to different people and their predictions.
Oh, I appreciate that. You never quite know. You never quite know how that's going to come about, or going to be perceived, because, I don't think massive amounts of myself, so I have to be pushed. So Chris, who looks after me, who you've spoken to sort this out, that was Chris's idea. That was Chris's idea, to be fair to him, the preview and the review stuff, and Martin from ITV Sport, he helps me out with a bit of editing and stuff. So they put it together and were like, do you know what? You should do it. So we had a go at it, and it got well received. Like, loads of people, when you're doing the next one, and you don't get, not that money's everything, but because I'm quite busy with other stuff, sometimes it's a struggle to do. But do you know what I must say? Anytime I ring a driver or Tim Harvey or Steve Ryder or anyone to help me out, they're like, yeah, what time, mate? Yeah, we'll do that. And that's what I love about it. They're kind of trusting. Even Plato's hard work to get hold of, but he's like, yeah, I'll come on. No worries, mate, yeah. So it's good, and, I'm glad that you said that, because it makes me want to do it a bit more now. So, yeah, it is. It's great, and, I think that we'll try and do a lot more of it, and try and get the views of different people, and just try and keep the ball rolling, and get an outlet for everything that is great about British touring cars.
Yeah, it was always brilliant last season, because a lot of my family were doing like the fantasy British touring car competition, where you make your team and put your drivers in. For the weekend, would always be like, right, let's see what Paul O'Neill thinks, so we know who to put in our team. And it was brilliant. Right? Yeah.
Oh, mate, that is awesome. I love that.
It was.
That's so funny. It's weird, isn't it? Because what's really funny? When I was a driver, I always thought I knew what I was on about. But you know what? I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because you were so focused on what you did, and that was all that mattered. But now I'm a pundit. I need to know what is going on. And it's amazing when you're not driving. It's amazing how many people want to tell you everything about what they think, the drivers, the team manager. So they'll tell you anything. When you're a driver, they'll tell you nothing. They'll just put a gun to your head and tell you to go away. So honestly, that is so funny to hear. But I know a lot more than I used to. But it's a hard gig, because a lot of people watch touring cars, so they kind of like Paul, or Paul or Tim. They must know, and I'm like, we'll find out, eh? But you have to watch a lot of racing, and I'm like you, mate. Your back wall's making me laugh, because that's exactly what my back wall was like when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean?
It keeps on going around. So,
hey, it's cheaper than wallpaper, but
exactly.
It is great, and it's nice of you to say that. But a lot of work goes into it, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, obviously, very quickly, I know. Obviously, I'll let you get on very soon. This has been brilliant. 29 productions. How did that start?
Wow, yeah, 29, man. It's weird, isn't it? I don't forget about 29, but because everything else is so flat out,
Yeah.
I always forget we've got an amazing company we've got. So it's myself and two really good friends that I've met through racing and TV work, and yeah, it's quite a story actually, because I'm a brand ambassador for BMW. So I do a lot of work for BMW, the passenger rides, the filming, this, that, and the other. And anyway, I get on quite well with BMW, and a lady called Hannah, who I do a lot of the work for, she just asked me one day, we've got some filming that might need doing really quick. Do you know anyone that could do it? I was like, I don't know, actually. I'll ask ITV. But in the end, I just asked a couple of people I knew, Martin and Kieran, asked them a couple of questions about, what do we need to do? Could you do this that BMW want to do? They went, yeah, we'll do that. Anyway, by the end of that day, we'd signed non-disclosure thingies, NDAs, about, it was actually our first job was for the 330i, the new BMW. So we knew about that. We knew about that in October. So we couldn't say anything. Yeah. So then we put a limited company together. Then I started to speak to my accountant, get that registered, like do everything, because then we were a supplier to BMW, and we, and the boys. I mean, I'm just the gob on the stick. I speak to people to get the deals. Them lads worked like you would not believe, and I was away when I think I was working for McLaren, and our first project got off the ground. It was amazing, and and now we're just like, we're not flying, and it doesn't give us loads of dollar, but it's just great to be involved in. And it's really nice when people say, "Oh, watch that's really good what you've done there," because the lads are proud. They're not money grabbers. They're just proud people, and they like it when people say the work's good. So yeah, 29's good, and it's all. We didn't know what to call the company, and the lads were like, "Want to call it your race number?" I was like, "What?" And we were going to be called hashtag 29 Productions, but I think that was already taken in America. So yeah, 29 Productions it was, and it's mega. It's absolutely cool. Never thought I'd have anything. I don't even know how TV works still, but yeah. Got a production company, and jobs are good.
So, the content's always really good on it. So yeah, I always enjoy that. Obviously, you do lots of great charity work as well. So that's very good.
Yeah. Again, I don't ever sit there and think, oh, we must do this and we must do that. And the 29 lads are very supportive of charity stuff that any of us do. And my particular interest at the minute is the Oulton Haven Hospice that we did quite a lot of stuff for in the middle of last year. And because my brother was in there and he passed away about 4 years ago. So the lads have always been very supportive of that. But they will do anything they can to help out with that stuff. And charity is a difficult one at the minute for everyone, because charity starts at home at the end of the day, and there's a lot of people out there who can't even put food on the table. But what I will say to anybody, like I've tried to do, is try and pick the charities that obviously, one, mean the most to you, but two, are around the corner from you, because they're the ones that need the most help, because they don't have big budgets to promote themselves like big companies do, because they are charities, but they are businesses as well. People need to be paid for what they do. So it's that's all I'd say to people, is try and pick up on the side of the local charities, and especially in this pandemic, but going forward as well when we're out of it. But no, it's good. I like a bit of charity work. I'm looking at my bike at the minute, actually, and it's looking a sorry state. It's on my to-do list today to wash it.
Absolutely. Well, to finish off, a look to next season. With obviously Ash Sutton coming back, he'll be gunning to get the title again.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what? There's still a few stories to be told yet about where people are going. I think from reading between the lines, I don't like making predictions when not everything's on the table. But I think I've got to say, West Surrey Racing will be licking the wounds in that BMW because of their wet weather performance. The wet weather performance was fine until Ash Sutton and the Infinity come along with BMR engineering, laser tools, the rest of them. So I think it's going to be another and no, unless the rules change, I can't see anything but a rear-wheel drive car winning it next year, and that will either be Colin Turkington or Ash Sutton. And again, it'll be a fantastic year again. So we're very lucky to get that done. But yeah, I'd like a few more challenges in it. I thought last year, if I'm honest, last year let us down a bit, and I think it was because of the situation we were in. I think I was sat there on the last round waiting for something to happen, and it was like,
yeah,
just, you know what I mean? So I think it'll be a lot closer, and I think there'll be a lot more going on. But yeah, there'll be action, and there'll be some cool stories coming out, I reckon, about drivers going places and who's going to be where. So yeah, I look forward to it. It'll be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much for coming on. This has been absolutely brilliant. Just very quickly, thank you for everything you do for us touring car fans.
That's all right, mate. Anytime. I enjoy it. I always try and, I'm a fan at the end of the day. So yeah, it's cool. And I appreciate your kind words. And yeah, anytime, mate. As soon as I seen it come through off Chris, I was like, yeah, tell him. Sort it. But yeah, sorry I was an hour delayed.
Oh, no worries at all. And yeah, I definitely want to be like you, because, you commentate, you've had a great racing career. You do your charity work, 29 productions, and obviously you're friends with everyone on the touring car grid, which is brilliant.
Oh, thanks, mate. I appreciate it, fella. I really appreciate it. It's all good. It's all good. Well, listen, thank you for a good interview. It was nice to talk to someone who knew their stuff, and yeah, someone as passionate as me, mate. So all the very best, and stay safe. All your family, mate.
You too. All right, man. See you soon.
Thanks, mate. See you in a bit.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.